I know this we are talking about Corona alone, and I've just thought about looking at some of the graphs that I've seen or I've come across in some of the articles that I've been reading, and we tried to see what they mean or how they can also help us to understand what we need to do as peoples around here. Now, one of the graph here talks about the countries that are exporting cases to the rest of the world, or some of the countries where some of these cases of coronavirus are coming from, in some of these developing nations or wherever it is. And what I saw in this graph is that majority of the cases comes from those countries that already have the highest levels of coronavirus infection. Now, if you look at the graph, it shows that by 23rd of March, America had very few cases coming from that country, but they were increasing. If you look at what is happening here, you can see an increase that it was exporting some of these cases to the other country, or some of its nationals were playing a role in making sure that some of those countries get some of the cases. And here we have another country here called Italy. And if you look at the graph, it shows that one of the countries that had the highest export of some of these cases was Italy. And you agree with me because of how high the infection is in Italy. When we have China, you can see China has already stagnated because as you know, the disease started in China, and the virus started in China and has been there for the last 2 months. So what we have been seeing is a situation where they have been able to flatten the curve, and in most cases, the cases that they are getting are very few. So you can see the level of importation was very low compared to those other countries. And then we have Iran. I know this graph was created or developed on 23rd. So by this time, we still have other places that have high level of infection when it comes to infecting other countries. So I also another graph here that I also found interesting of how this coronavirus infection is affecting different areas in terms of the weather patterns, the summer or the equatorial part of the world, and also the winter. And if you can see from January 26 going forward up to March, you can see that majority of the countries that have been affected are the countries that are in winter, meaning that majority of the countries that have had a situation of high level of coronavirus, or where the levels have been increasing tremendously or exponentially, are those countries that are in winter. But you can also see the countries that are in summer or they are tropical in nature. We have the level increasing, but not as high as what we see in those countries that are dealing with summer. And I think with winter. And I think I can also explain this using this graph. We can also explain this using this graph here. And what you can see in this graph is the same thing, that from the 26th of January to about 17th of March, there was a very rapid increase in the cases in the countries that are in winter, but a lagged increase in the countries that are in summer, or the equatorial countries, like maybe the sub-Saharan African countries. But when you look at what is happening here at the edge, you realize that these countries are catching up. So while some of these countries in the winter are getting into a position where we can say that they are flattening the curve, or they are reaching at the peak of the curve, we still have the countries in Africa also coming up, but also tipping a bit at the edge. Now we have another graph here that tries to show what has been happening in this country when it comes to let me just deal with technology a bit. When it comes to the ages that are being affected, I think this is what I want to put now here. But as it is, I still have a problem. So before I come to that, let me just look at this. Let me just look at this graph here. This also something here that I saw, which talks about the coronavirus life on the services, on the different services that we have. And as you can see there, we have the metal service where it takes 5 days. We have the glass service where it takes between 5 days and 10 to 5 days. Then we have the ceramic, we have 5 days. Then we have also the wood service 4 days. We have the plastic 2 to 3 days. We have the stainless steel 2 to 3 days, cardboard 1 day, aluminium 2 to 3 days. Then we have the copper 4 days. And I'm wondering, if this is what happens, then it means that if we have to touch some of these services, and actually these are some of the services that are at home, then we will be in a situation where everybody will get some of these things if we are in contact with somebody who has it. So I think it is a big issue, and we need to think about how we can be able to protect ourselves further. Now, I wanted to look at this graph also. I've heard people talking about a situation where we have very few children and different ages getting some of these diseases. And that is why I thought it was important for me to look at this graph here. Now, this graph shows how COVID-19 virus is being handled by the different age groups, and also males and female. And if you look at the cases that have been there for the children between 0 and 9 years, it is very few, especially for female children. Between 10 and 19 years, you can see it rises a bit, meaning that these are some of the people who are being affected, especially the male ones. I don't know why the male ones are more affected than the female. If you go to 20 to 29, you can see the graph increases. Now the women are more, or the female are more than the lady, and I think this is because of socializing. Women are more social than men. If you look at the age of 30 to 39, you can see we still have more women than men having the number of cases. Then 40 to 49, the women or the female graph goes down, and now the male graph is up there. And I would want to know why we have such a situation. Then between 50 and 59, you can see 60 to 69, the same thing happens. In 70 to 79, the graph is equal both for male, the cases between males and female is equal. So you can see the cases are much more higher for both genders between the age of 20 and 60. So the majority of the people who have these cases are between the ages of 20 and 69. And I think these are the people who are supposed to make sure that they social distance, and also try to make sure that they wash their hands and also keep clean so that we can flatten the curve. So for that, I think that was what I wanted to talk about. So have a nice day.